Well, first of all, I think we should not call them protests because you have no leaders, you have no demands. It is difficult even to identify any sort of organized group in this. What it is a revolt and riots of extremely young people. I mean, there are people as young as 13, 12 in the streets, and mostly it is a sort of, well, obviously anger, but also an opportunity to pillage, because shops have been destroyed, including many shops belonging to members of their own communities. Stuff has been stolen, and you have left-wing MPs in France who say, but these children are hungry. But I suspect when they go and steal Apple watches in an Apple store, having destroyed everything, they're not going to eat them. It's a great deal of unrest, and I mean, it is very violent, but it's not a surprise because in the past decade and a half, I should say, there has been a change towards more senseless violence. One of the things that is fascinating is people say the French police is discriminating, it's racist. I'm not saying the French police is perfect because it isn't, but increasingly nowadays, not just the police, but similarly, you have firemen, fire brigades, first help responders, hospital ambulances, and they are all greeted with pelted with stones, sometimes shot at with shotguns, using mortar fire. And that's just nihilism. It's got nothing to do with the fact that there's discrimination because firemen just put out fires. They do not ask you what color you are. And same thing with hospital people. Well, that there was homicide is very obvious. It's a moot question whether it was manslaughter or homicide, but a 17-year-old kid died, and he may not have been perfect, but no 17-year-old kid should die. The policeman says that he asked the young man who was with two other young men in that car to stop, and that he first complied, and then he started he pushed the accelerator, and his hand was shaken. I've no idea whether he's lying or not. That is for the justice to decide. When you look at the video, you see two conflicting and shocking things. And one is, of course, that at one stage you hear the shot, and it's very obvious that the policeman who was literally leaning on the car door shot inside the car, and we know now that he hit Nahel in the thorax. On the other hand, you do see the car moving, so it's possible that the policeman's arm was shaken. All of this has got to be decided. They also need to interrogate the two young men who were in the car. The circumstances, why was the young man arrested, well, stopped and halted and asked to show his papers? It's not so much for question of color. The car was an 80,000 euro Mercedes that had Polish plates and turned out to be rented from a secondary rental organization. That in itself is very strange. Also, Nael was 17, and you can only get a driver's license in France at 18. And he has, again, I do not want to accuse the victim because the victim should not be a victim, but he had been stopped by police for various infractions, big and small, and there were several instances in which he was driving cars that he ought not have been driving. The policeman says he was scared. It is possible. I do not know more. And the whole point of justice is that they should be doing their investigation in peace. And they apparently moved the qualification from manslaughter to homicide. So, perhaps it tells us something, but the judge will tell us. I don't think we can expect much. I think we know what the leaders in parliament will say. The National Rally of Marine Le Pen will ask for more police and strong sanctions. The NUPES will say pour more money into the banlieues because there's a dire situation out there. And to be completely honest, they will be expressing the voices of most of French opinion. Whether that leads to anything, I have no clue. And, I don't think much, but I would like to be proven wrong. Well, I've had many questions about this, and very often you have American journalists and they say this is Black Lives Matter in France. And unfortunately, or rather fortunately, it is not. What's unfortunate is that it's being said and people don't think. I do not want to defend the French police so much because unlike the gendarmerie, who take care of law and order in small towns and in the countryside, the police is not as competent, not as well trained, more overworked, more demoralized, more than, it's the profession in France that has the most rate of suicide. So they are not happy. They're not happy, and they are the ones who have sort of everyday policing parts in difficult areas, and with the taxes I described below. But it is also very true that they are prejudiced. It is also true that half of them now are estimated to vote for Marine Le Pen, and you have a profession that ought to be considered as well, but we have to deal with that. Having said that, last year, and American police killed 1,200 people. Last year, French police killed 7 people. I am not saying that it's not 7 too many. Of course it is, but it is not proportionate. And in the case of 2016 of Adama Traoré, which you quote, he was arrested by black policemen from Guadeloupe, so Frenchmen from the West Indies. He was cuffed because he had been resisting arrest. He said, I have asthma, and that's why they did not listen to him. But he looked incredibly fit. He'd just sort of been chased, and he was known as a drug dealer. The police said, you're not escaping again. We ran after you. You're fitter than we are. They took him to the police station, and the tragedy ensued. Adama's sister, who obviously is shocked by the death of her brother, has built up a whole French narrative on this. She was invited to America. She posed in Time magazine as one of 100 most influential people in the world. She was wearing Louboutin shoes because lots of fashion companies decided to make her a heroine. But it's a tragedy that went in all sorts of directions and then it vanished in France because you have other instances in France, thankfully not tragic, where the police were more visibly racist than in that instance. Well, I mean, when we talk about the mood in the streets, you have 2 different moods in the streets. You have people whose shops have been destroyed, whose stuff has been stolen, many of whom belong to the same minorities as the looters, and the anger in that case is also very important. So the president is in a tight spot because he's got to deal with the anger of the young people whose friend, the young man they can identify with, has been killed. And on the other hand, you've got people who say, we try and obey the law. We try and make our businesses work. They're sometimes very small businesses. Everyone suffered from COVID. Everyone is suffering from inflation. And, there is complete responsibility. So you have both sides. Whether it will calm down, I suspect yes. And I could not give you very logical reasons for this. But unless the president or somebody else makes a terrible gaffe, I think at one stage, because, again, these are not organized people, because the police is now 45,000 cops are in the streets every night, there comes a moment when you give up on this and you say, yeah, well, I got a pair of shoes out of this and now I'm going home and I will wait for something else to happen. That's the only possibility, I should say.